Second speaker in sequence is a former Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable Arthur Meighen.
The footsteps of time move fast, and how short is the term of life. Very brief it is to those who are eager to toil and to achieve. The thought now, though, deepest in every mind must be, how short, how narrowly bounded is human vision. Here in this place, hallowed by every Canadian, we meet 50 years after his death to do honor to the man who, more than any other, founded our country, and we meet under the shadow of the blackest clouds that ever overcast the world. We meet amid the fires, the thunders of war, distant perhaps in space, but not in truth, threatening all we possess and all we are. Sir Wilfrid Laurier ascribed to Macdonald as his highest attribute a far-reaching vision beyond the events of his time. But not to Macdonald, nor to any statesman of his era, or even of that which followed, did there come into contemplation any such tide of tragedy as rages in our day. We ourselves, let us confess, cannot pierce the future even as far as our fathers did. For events become swifter and bigger as man's mastery over nature becomes more and more supreme. We turn aside for a moment to pay tribute where tribute is due, and to gain inspiration if we can, courage if we can, wisdom if we can, at the fountain of history. If it had been given to the penetrating mind of Macdonald to see beyond the veil and to foreshadow those strains and perils which now surround his country, I am not sure that his course at any stage of his career could have been different from what it was. He was a Canadian struggling with the diversities and jealousies of far-scattered people. With him, it is true, Canada was first. Sir John Thompson said that his daily thought was expressed in Webster's words: "Let our object be our country, our whole country, and nothing but our country." His true and deep Canadianism was to him a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. But with him, Canada was first, not in any narrow sense of singleness or priority, but only in the sense of his own immediate duty. Never at any time did he lose sight of or subordinate to a selfish Canadian purpose the oneness of our interest, the oneness of our security, and the oneness of our destiny with the British Empire. From the first message to his people, delivered in this city of Kingston in 1844, to his last great appeal in the year of his death, he never ceased to affirm his conviction that our prosperity rested on the permanence of our place in that empire, and that our freedom as a nation depended on its unity and on its strength. In this, he was powerfully supported by his colleagues from French Canada, who loved him and shared his faith. They knew well what we all know in our country, and what the crashing events of this hour are driving home to every quarter of this continent, that the cornerstone of liberty must not be broken if liberty is to survive, and that cornerstone is Britain. We do honor to him here as the father of our Canadian Confederation, but right in the heart of England, in the Cathedral of St. Paul, honor has been done him as one whose services to the Empire deserve to be ranked with those of Wellington and Nelson. Legend and biography are full of tales which illumine the personal life and reveal the personal charm of Macdonald. Those qualities we describe as human were his in almost incomparable degree. Of those we have heard today, we have read of them for half a century. Never have they found expression in terms so graceful, so memorable, and so generous as in that immortal tribute paid him in the House of Commons by Sir Wilfrid Laurier. Not even the rich and stately eulogy delivered by Sir John Thompson at Hamilton in 1893 can last as long as Laurier's great speech. We are not likely ever to forget that salute to Canada's most illustrious son, the story of the devotion, ardent devotion and affection with which he was followed, of the inner, subtle, and undefinable graces of soul which win and keep the hearts of men, of the angel of death touching him with his wing, of his struggle against enfeebled health and declining strength until the hand of fate pinned him to his bed to die. We read in many places of his tact and his urbanity, of the amiability and gentleness of his nature, of the kindness, humor, and forbearance which seemed the only weapons he would turn to attacks from those who should have been his friends. From every source we learn of his patience, his unbounded and unending patience. These are virtues possessed by a few, a very favored few, but possessed in equal degree by Sir John's great rival and successor. They are virtues in public life of almost unbelievable importance, virtues valued most by those to whom they are denied. The gifts I have just described helped him tremendously. They helped him to office. They helped him stay in office. They helped him in the supreme art of governing men. But do not make the mistake too often made of thinking that these talents stood alone, or that they were the basic and enduring talents which accounted for his usefulness to Canada. The truth is, he was the most practical of men, a toiler, a builder, devoted indefatigably to getting things done. No one can read his history, his letters, and especially his speeches in Parliament without realizing the comprehensive grasp of facts, the easy order with which those facts fell into position, and consequently the firmness of conviction with which he could drive home his conclusions. Contrary to the general belief, he could reason just as well as he could appeal. His mind was quick, clear, and intense. His nature earnest and tenacious. Without these solid qualities, he never would have reached the place he occupies in history as a parliamentary leader. A reading of Hansard or of discussions outside Parliament shows a marked difference between the methods of Macdonald's day and of our own. Into the causes I will not enter except to say that universal suffrage may be won. Whatever the reason, you will search in vain among the speeches of Macdonald or of his contemporaries for anything in the nature of a class appeal. He assumed, and they assumed, that the good of the state was the only talisman, that next to the safety of the nation, the main objective of legislation must be to help those who need help most, to give opportunity to the unadvantaged, to encourage and assist those who are down to rise. They knew, and they assumed everybody else knew, that as soon as it could be shown that any article of policy could contribute to this end, that moment a case for such policy was made. From this point of view, they argued on the merits of whatever legislative step was an issue. They did not consider it the part of necessity or the part of honor to attribute other designs to their foes. Never will you find in the speeches of Macdonald or of his opposition those attacks on the successful few and that flattery of the many, accompanied by portraits of heaven, which abound now in the orations of more countries than our own. When the time came to Macdonald for an appeal, he made it, and it was always a manly appeal and a very effective appeal. Sir John Thompson quotes one of these efforts made at a time of great difficulty and danger. It is not by any means a finished literary production, but it would be hard indeed to conceive of anything more admirably designed to rouse the loyalty of his friends and recover wanderers from his fold. I have fought the battle of Confederation, the battle of Union, the battle of the Dominion of Canada. I throw myself upon the House. I throw myself upon this country. I throw myself upon posterity. And I believe that notwithstanding the many failings of my life, I shall have the voice of my country in this House rallying around me. And, sir, if I am mistaken in that, I can confidently appeal to a higher court, to the court of my conscience and to the court of posterity. I leave it with this House with every confidence. I am equal to either fortune. I can see past the decision of this House, whether for or against me. But whether it be for or against me, I know, and it is no vain boast for me to say so. For even my enemies will admit that I am no boaster, that there does not exist in Canada a man who has given more of his time, more of his heart, more of his wealth, or more of his intellect and power, such as they may be, for the good of this Dominion of Canada. Sir John Macdonald does not stand alone in the galaxy of our eminent men, but his greatest rival, to his eternal credit, has awarded him the primacy among the founders and builders of our nation. For the heavier tasks of today, there is more to be learned from him than from any other. If we govern ourselves, each one of us, by the principles which governed him, if we work as he worked, dare as he dared, and follow the star that lighted his life, we will serve our country as we ought to serve it, and with God's help we will save it.